Eduard Heger, former Prime Minister of Slovakia, welcome to Taiwan Talks.
Thank you.
With Ukraine's seizure of Russia's Kursk region, how dangerous is this point in time for Vladimir Putin?
Well, I look at it from a greater perspective, and we are a neighboring country, so we see how important it is for Ukraine to win this aggression, win this war, because we have to realize that all this war is not just about keeping their territorial integrity and keeping their country, but it's also they're fighting for our values, for the democratic values, for the freedom and sovereignty.
But how would you assess, what Kursk has done? It's, been written about that the Ukrainians have turned the tables.
Yes.
They've reversed, perhaps, the course of this war.
Well, I think it brings this, it was a surprise. Nobody really expected that, but it shows that they are serious about getting their freedom and their territory back. So it is going to be challenging, we know, but it is bringing the importance and also it helps not to get into fatigue of supporting Ukraine. So this is, I think, a great help. So we see that that Ukraine is still fighting and is still willing to fight for their values.
So you talked about the reinvigoration of that support. Do you see that translating into the support that Zelenskyy has asked for from the allies? He's asked now for long-range missiles which he can use to hit Russia.
I understand. Well, this is rather sensitive, and we really have to look at the perspective how Ukraine can defend and regain their territory. And they've been asking for different equipment. I think Europe responded rather slower than faster. It was a new situation. There was nobody really knew what to expect. But now, throughout that many days of the conflict, we can see how to progress. So that's why I think it's important to really provide sufficient support. And on this, I think it needs to be elaborated a little more.
If you were still leading Slovakia, would you send him, or would you allow him to use those long-range missiles in Russia?
I would need to hear more of the plans, which I don't have that information as I'm not in the office anymore. So I would need to hear more of the strategy and the plans of what's going on. But I think it's important that they gain their territory that they lost to Russians. So that's important. That's the equipment that they need at this moment.
Poland has come out and said that Kursk does not change the Allies' sort of anti-escalatory stance. From your knowledge of, your member states in NATO when you were Prime Minister, how many of them would be, aligning with Poland?
I think the escalation. We all are aware of the risk of the escalation. So we have to be really strategic and really wise. That's why I said that it's important to really think on the strategy how to regain the territory and not go into a conflict where both sides fight each other's territory. So therefore, it's more about the symbols and what we see behind it. So I think nobody really wants any escalation at all. I mean, so we have to understand that this is. We live in a 21st century that we thought is going to be the century of peace. And we still have to want that. We need to have a 21st century of peace, of de-escalation. That's the wish of every citizen and even of the modern and Western world. We want to live in peace. We want to live a comfortable life and growing our families and our life.
There may be different definitions of peace, though. So peace on the Russian side, in basically their maximalist position in the latest round of negotiations in June. They want, Ukraine to hand over the 4 provinces and also to stop their aspirations to join NATO. Of course, Ukraine doesn't want that at all and does not agree to that.
Yeah, well, we have to understand that we are facing a lot of disinformation. And this is not just a war of weapons, but it's also hybrid warfare. We see how we are, like in Slovakia, we are influenced by a lot of disinformation. That is, we know it comes from Russia. They have the Russian narrative. And I know this narrative is being shared around the world. I saw it in the United States, the same narratives shared as a disinformation on the social platforms. So that's why when we speak of peace, I mean, we understand what's peace, but if somebody wants to interpret that peace means that somebody gives the territory, I mean, we have to understand Ukraine is a free, democratic country.
But how do we stop the fighting? Because that's what peace is, isn't it? So Ukraine.
Well, first of all, we don't stop it. It's right now. We have to understand that it's the Ukrainians who are fighting with the Russians. The best scenario is that Russia withdraws their soldiers and troops from the territory that doesn't belong to them. So that's the pressure, that's the diplomatic pressure, and that's what Ukraine wants as well. We are a neighboring country. I spoke many times with the prime minister, with the president, and their only goal is to get to the point where what it was before the war. They are not the aggressors. They are the victim.
So Kursk, as the Ukrainians themselves have said, is to basically put Kyiv into a better negotiating position, and that would have to happen before the US election because of the things that Donald Trump has said in terms of stopping the war in 24 hours. So given that, what do you think that Ukraine needs to achieve in Kursk or beyond in order to put themselves in that better negotiating position, as you said, not to cede territory?
Honestly, I think that this kind of debate that we have, I don't think that's the right debate. I understand that we are trying to calculate, but we have to understand that when you speak to the soldiers in the battlefield, it is not a game. This is not a game. It is not like what they can. I mean, they're really fighting for their country. They're fighting for their lives, for their families.
So you dispute that they are trying to use Kursk to be in a better position to get more leverage?
No, I'm not disputing that. I'm not disputing that at all. But you're asking, okay, so what else they can get? How far they should go? Or
what position ideally does Zelenskyy need to be in order to, basically make Russia, Putin, come to that table?
Yes, but you said a very important word, and you said ideally. But when I spoke to President Zelenskyy several times, and they really, they've been fighting this whole war. When it started, I remember the discussions we had at the EU summit. The best estimates would be that they will last 30 days. It's been over 900 now. So you can see that they're doing the best they can. And it's very hard to say what it's going to get. And that's why when you said, okay, how far? Well, we'll see what they will be able to do, but they're trying to also move forward on their defense. And that's where we need to focus. And it's hard to estimate what is this going to cost on the negotiation level. How will Vladimir Putin respond to it? How will Moscow respond? What kind of result this is going to bring? Nobody has that really crystal ball to know what would be the best strategy. So that's why I'm rather sensitive on giving some strong answers and some strong estimates.
Linked to the propaganda that you mentioned, there have been rumors that Ukraine plans to attack the Kursk nuclear plant, that it could be because they want to take back Zaporizhia nuclear plant. How do you assess this?
I remember the time when Zaporizhia was endangered, and it's been several times. So as I know, I mean, everybody is aware that it's very dangerous to do any fights around these kind of power plants because it can cause tremendous damage to the population also in Europe. I think...
And it's not too far away from Ukraine either.
Yes, absolutely. So I don't think that there is any plans to endanger this kind of power plants. So to make everybody will watch for not harming this kind of infrastructure, because it could cause tremendous damage to the people, to the civilians.
Do you see that as the Russian disinformation then?
I would see it more as a Russian disinformation, yes. Yes.
And so what's the objective of that particular narrative?
Well, of course, I mean, you have to understand all the disinformation are focused on raising the fear in people. So anything that can be twisted in fearing the people and showing that the Ukrainian people and Ukrainian soldiers are mean and aggressive, I refuse that. I know these people. I've been to Ukraine several times. So they just defending themselves. That's the narrative. And if anybody tried to say something else, I will say, I don't believe that. I know them. I was in Bucha. You know, I saw the terrible things that the Russian army did to Ukrainians. So if somebody tries to push me into or tries to persuade me that Ukrainians are aggressive soldiers who are harming civilians, no, that's not true. That's not true.
Zelenskyy has said, as a result of the lack of reaction from Moscow to the Kursk incursion, he has said that, the Kremlin does not have any red lines, that basically that was bluff.
Well, he said that ever since, right? I mean, I remember when he said that he activated or he gave the first level of activation of the nuclear weapon. So to me, that doesn't change. I mean, his rhetorics, we know. I mean, and again, do you want to trust Vladimir Putin? Because we saw so many things. I mean, he crossed the line so many times.
But this sort of the bluff has succeeded because it has held back certain weapon systems to be supplied to Ukraine earlier, F-16s, the ATACMS, and the argument, especially say from Eastern European countries and also Republicans in the US, was that if Ukraine had been supplied with these weapon systems from NATO, from the Allies earlier, it would be in a much stronger position and possibly even in a completely different position in terms of this war. So is there a need to reassess?
Well, I will give you a different picture so you can compare. Slovakia was the first country that gave the S-300 air defense system to Ukraine. When we were about to do it, of course we didn't share it publicly, but it was debated whether somebody will give an anti-defense system to Ukraine because they needed so much to protect their civilians. Everybody said that's going to be escalation of the conflict. But we said no. I mean, we gave it. Was it escalation of the conflict? No, it wasn't. Nothing happened. And we spoke about giving the MiG-29s. We gave the MiG-29s. And again, there was a lot of, we can call it bluffs or a lot of rhetorics. If you do that, we'll harm you, etc. So therefore, I think we have to always balance the debate. We have to tell the truth, and we have to speak the values. If Ukraine, that's why I'm sorry I'm repeating it as much, but I want to emphasize that Ukraine is defending themselves and was brutally attacked. The civilians of Ukraine are dying every day by the bombs that are coming to their territory from Russia. Is this normal? I'm asking in 21st century, is this normal? Is this that a country attacks and bombs a neighbor country? No, that's not normal. This is what the people of 21st century don't want to live in. They don't want to see it. And again, I'll tell you another example. I was coming to Kiev, and as we were entering to the train station, I saw the people standing at the train station. That morning, when I was coming there with Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, in other city, people standing at the same train and the same kind of train station were bombed and killed. So, but they have to go to work. So they have to come to the train station. They have to nobody wants to live like that. So that's why everybody has to say, no, please, stop the war. Nobody wants the war. And that's what needs to be shouted out from everybody in the world toward Kremlin. Because they're the ones where they say, bomb more, bomb more, bomb more. So we need to unite for support of the Ukraine, for the peace for all.
But I guess hope isn't really a strategy, is it? It's
I'm not speaking yet. No, I didn't mean that. Okay. But
there needs to be leverage. There needs to be something to force them to do that.
And what is it?
Yeah, that's my question to you.
We don't know yet. We haven't found that. But keeping on the values, that's what we have to stick on. Because sometimes when you go this way, you go like, okay, let's do something that is not related to these values. No, we have to still be rooted in our values, and every decision must be tested to these values, whether we still are on the right track. Because if we don't do that testing, we can do wrong decisions, and we don't want that.
You mentioned about the fighter jets and the air defense systems. So the current Slovakian government has filed a criminal complaint against you. As you well know. Yeah. They're saying that you exposed the country at the time to unacceptable risk. Why do you think they're going after you now?
Well, of course, I mean, we know that the current government is very much pro-Russian. I mean, that's what was their campaign on. It was based on a lot of disinformation. So they're just continuing in their speech what they had before. And they made certain promises to the people who voted for them, so they're trying to follow this. But it's totally absurd. It's totally absurd. If they would do this, you know, Slovak uprising was, again, it was in 1944. We were under Second World War, and we were under Nazis' control. And there was a part of Slovak nation that went into the uprising. We're just going to celebrate on the 29th of August. We're going to celebrate the anniversary of Slovak uprising, and the government will go there because that's a big national holiday. So and we were asking for help to our allies, and our allies provided the help. So if they're saying that we did something wrong, then they basically undermining the Slovak national uprising, because Ukraine was in the situation we were in 1944. And we acted like our allies back then. So if they want to say that we acted incorrectly, then they're saying that in 1944, our allies were not supposed to help the people of Slovakia fighting for their freedom.
So let's talk about Robert Fico then, your successor. He based his campaign on promises to halt the weapons to Ukraine and also blocking Kiev's NATO aspirations. Of course, that's direct opposition to your stance. So how do you read his election and his foreign policy? Do Slovakians voted him in? Did they no longer care for Ukraine?
Well, actually, and I'll show you an example because this is a great case to study. When Robert Fico is now in the prime minister, he's active, and actually there is a lot of weapons going to Ukraine. They just sell them. We were the ones who were giving it to the Ukraine because it was a help to the country, but we were getting reimbursed from the European Peace Facility that the European Union established. So it wasn't really for free, it was for money that we received, but we didn't do it for the money, we did it for the help, but actually got money for it. Now Robert Fico is now selling, Slovak companies are selling weapons, and even more weapons, more bullets to Ukraine. Ukraine has to pay for it. And so that's why how cynical is his approach, because he said not even a bullet will go from Slovakia to Ukraine. But now thousands, hundreds of thousands of bullets go. So he basically lied to his voters. That's the first thing. And on the approach of the foreign policy, the result of his policy is that Slovakia is totally isolated. He was very much vocal. V4 is a format of Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland, and Hungary. He said we need to meet. We were meeting when I was prime minister. We were meeting as a V4. Now, Czech Republic and Poland refused to meet. They said no more. So you could see that his foreign policy actually brought bigger isolation because he focuses now on rebuilding the relationship with Moscow. Our allies are countries of European Union. Those are the strongest. Our economy is connected to countries V4 and also to Germany and to Austria. Those are our closest together with Hungary, Poland, and Czech Republic. So, but those relationships don't work. That's a very sad story right now for Slovakia, that we've been really isolated.
Except maybe for Hungary. And so I want to ask you how worried you are about Slovakia becoming Russia's second Trojan horse alongside Hungary.
Actually, with some of the statements, you can say that Robert Fico is even ahead of Hungary. So So yeah, I mean, this is currently happening. It's not good. It's causing the isolation of Slovakia for the foreign affairs. I'm glad that the business people are not influenced by this, and the cooperation is continuing. I'm now in Taiwan, and when I was the prime minister, we signed a lot of MOUs, and we started cooperation with many of your companies and institutions, and that's kind of continuing, which is good. And that's, I think, that's what needs to happen. Sometimes the politics is giving statements, but at the end of the day, it's important that the people in the daily life, they kind of are able to cross over and continue in the friendship.
Right, right. So let's bring it to this region of the world. How do you think Xi Jinping is reading this latest turn of events in the war? You know, what lessons do you think he may be getting from either Russian weaknesses or, you know, Allied support?
I would say that he's still reading, and he will keep reading. So I think there is not any conclusion being made, and that's why it's so important how the Western world will act toward Ukraine, whether we continue or not. So that's a very strong showcase.
How about the Allied support, though? Germany has already indicated that it will reduce armed support to Ukraine. Then possibly Donald Trump, if he wins the presidency in November, seems to be saying that as well.
That's not good. And I understand that there are elections in countries, and sometimes in the elections you have to really be careful on how you speak. But that's why I'm emphasizing the whole story of what's going on and what's behind it, because in general we really need Ukraine to succeed in the way, and they are the ones who need to say what success means. So that's very important. And I think President Zelenskyy is very much aware of it. So I mean, he's been fighting this war, this aggression, for the last more than 2 years. So yeah, the support needs to continue. There's no room for fatigue, and we have to together find a way how to help to bring a just peace.
So Republicans in the US, now they're known as prioritizers. They say that the US shouldn't keep supporting Ukraine, people like J.D. Vance, because it's just prolonging the war. And they argue that the focus actually should be on China and Taiwan, and that there is no connection between losing Ukraine and possibly losing Taiwan. Now, you don't believe that?
No, I don't believe that. I think it's...
So what do you say to these people?
Well, I think they need to come to Europe and study the case from Slovakia, Poland, Czech Republic, Lithuania, Latvia, and they will see. That's a totally different picture. I know that. I travel the world, and that's why I like to speak to the people to understand their perspective. I remember EU summits where we were discussing, and if not for the countries of Central and Eastern Europe, we could see how the Western leaders didn't have the same understanding because they don't have the same experience. We were explaining situations of our past for them to understand the mentality and the language and the symbols that Russia was showing to the whole world. So therefore, it was many times where we said that actually we need to show the unity and we need to show courage, because that's what they read. Because if we show weak, they think we surrender.
I mean, they would argue, though, that it's not about reputation, as in, you know, what happens to Ukraine, does that necessarily mean that allies or the US won't support Taiwan? But they argue it's to do with scarce resources. What would you say to that? As in, there cannot be enough resources to arm Ukraine as well as to arm Taiwan or the allies in the Asia Pacific.
But in this region, we don't face the problem of having a war, right?
So, not yet.
Exactly. And if we don't want to see any of growing conflict, then we need to help Ukraine. You just asked me how does read the situation Xi Jinping. I mean, And I told you, he's reading. So let's not, there is still one chapter that is not finished, and it's so important because the way that chapter will be finished will have impact on the other chapters. So therefore, we need to focus on that, on Ukraine, because they are fighting not just for themselves, they're fighting for the whole world, they're fighting for our values, they're fighting for the peace globally. And that's why I think messages like this are, as I said, rather selfish and don't really understand the whole concept and the extent of the situation.
So if Ukraine loses its war, what do you think this will mean for China's ambitions on Taiwan?
Well, first of all, I think that it will not happen. We cannot allow that to happen. And I'm speaking also as a neighboring country, because we heard Vladimir Putin as he said that he would like to go back prior to the year 1997, where we were not part of NATO, etc. So therefore, we need to focus, as I said, on Ukraine, because that images, if they lose this war, those images are not nice for globally, for the situation in the world. So that's why I would say my closing remarks would be that let's focus on the help to Ukraine, because that's what is going to indicate the future for the rest of the world.
Eduard Heger, thank you so much for joining Taiwan Talks today.
Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the great talk.